wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. This is Steve, coming to you from Conway, Arkansas. A few days before Halloween, and the year 2021 is when I'm recording this episode. Actually, this episode will release on Halloween, which probably not a big deal where a lot of listeners are, but here in the U.S. it's a pretty big holiday. In fact, it's my wife's favorite holiday. So we have a lot of decorations that remind us of our own mortality at the moment. This week, I want to continue my orderly progression through Chapter 5 of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. We're going to hear a very interesting reading about truth and about when to worry about things, when not to worry about things, and reminders on how to hold on even when times are uncertain. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Chapter 5, Number 10. Things are so much perplexed and in the dark that several great philosophers looked upon them as altogether unintelligible, and that there was no certain test for the discovery of truth. Even the Stoics agree that certainty is very hard to come at, that our assent is worth little. For where is infallibility to be found? However, our ignorance is not so great that we may discover how transitory and insignificant all things are, and that they may fall into the worst hands. Further, consider the temper of those who you converse with, and you will find the best will hardly do, not to mention that a man has work enough to make himself tolerable to himself. And since we have nothing but darkness and dirt to grasp at, since time and matter, motion and mortals are in perpetual flux, for these reasons I say I cannot imagine what there is worth minding or being eager about. On the other hand, a man ought to keep up his spirits, for it will not be long before his discharge comes. In the meantime, he must not fret at the delay, but satisfy himself with these two considerations. The one is that nothing will befall me but what is in accordance with the nature of the universe. The other, that I need do nothing contrary to my mind and divinity, since no one can force me to act thus or force me to act against my own judgment. An interesting reading from Marcus Aurelius this week. Somewhat depressing, depending on how you look at it. I think Marcus was prone to saying, "Oh, who cares? We're all going to die anyway," occasionally. But I think there's also some uplifting passages in this reading as well. We need to remember that Marcus is a human being, and he's writing to himself. Imagine if your journal was suddenly published and known by thousands. They'll say, "Well, you sure were mean or grumpy occasionally." Of course you are. You're a human being. So Marcus comes across that way from time to time, but he is a human being who practices philosophy. And he's trying to get better. But he is not a sage. None of us are sages. So he says at the beginning of this reading that this world is cloudy, it's murky, it's hard to understand. And in fact, he says there are many philosophers, especially like the skeptics, a school of thought that was thriving in the ancient world, that maybe truth is undiscoverable. Perhaps truth is impossible to know, so don't get hung up on it. But the Stoics said, yeah, it is discoverable, which is sort of the idea of modern science, that there are natural laws. The Stoics would attribute this to the divinity of nature, the logos. There are natural laws that have patterns, and those patterns are predictable and knowable. But that doesn't mean that all things are knowable, that knowledge is easy. And so the Stoics say that knowledge is hard to find, which is why we need to attempt to refrain from having opinions over things that are not obviously true. Because when we start having opinions, then we start opening ourselves up
to biases, to rejection of actual truth, and to discontent when things don't go our way. So as hard as it is to have no opinion, it is a Stoic position to often refrain from having opinions over things that you don't have all the facts on, because truth is hard to know. But he says there is one truth that is easy to see, and that is how transitory things are, how insignificant things are. Basically, all things change. Nothing is permanent. Change is the constant of the universe. And so when we hold our hopes for something, on something, oh, I need this. This is the thing that will save me. This is the thing that will make me happy. This person, this event, this item, going to a certain place will make me happy. All of these things are transitory and will change over time. It could be over the course of a minute, an hour, a day, or a millennium, but everything changes. There is nothing constant. And therefore, we can declare most things to be insignificant. When we elevate them in our own minds to something significant, that is our own narrative that we're applying to that thing, not the thing itself. He goes on to say that sages are hard to come by. In fact, I don't think anyone's ever met one. Even the best human being you know has massive faults. They may hide them. Those faults may be pretty well in check, but everybody has issues. So we know of no one who is perfect. And even we ourselves can sometimes not even stand to be in our own company. The average person cannot be locked away on their own for too long without having severe mental problems, because we aren't good company to ourselves in isolation. We are social beings, and we ourselves are not perfect sages. So therefore, when we're on our own, we tend to develop eccentricities, perhaps, so we could say. So some of our passions become amplified rather than our virtues. And so being on our own is often not a good thing. Seneca talks about that. To surround yourself with good people, don't trust yourself to be on your own for too long, and also don't trust yourself to be in the company of people who you would not want to emulate, because you will emulate them over time. But, he says, because all things are in flux, because all things change, there is no point to become eager or anxious, to start craving things out of your power, or to be anxious about things that you can't control, because all things will change. Things will change for the worse, things will change for the better, things will just change without any kind of value judgment. Things change. I believe I'm an amateur when it comes to my knowledge of Buddhism, but Buddhism talks about interdependence and change a lot. Things change. That is the one constant. And when we want things to stay the same, we want to stay a certain age. We don't want our loved ones to die. We want our bank account to remain full. We want our possessions to be in pristine shape. We are wishing for things that are absolutely against the flow of nature. Nature works a certain way. We must align with that. And the one constant is change. We must learn to live with that before we can accept reality as it is. He says, keep up your spirit. Soon your discharge will come. This sounds kind of depressing. Like, don't worry, soon you'll be dead. And I think from his perspective, soon you'll be dead, and your discharge will come. You won't have to worry about these things anymore. Your spirit will rejoin the Logos. You will be at one with divinity once again. But for now, he says, we have two things to keep us occupied, to keep us from going stir crazy, to keep us from losing the path. One, nothing can happen that is not in accord with nature. So if you remind yourself that, through premeditatio malorum, through the view from above, remembering what has happened to other people and how they bore it, there's nothing that can happen to you that is against the flow of nature. Loved ones pass away, things are lost, houses burn, we get sick, but that is all natural phenomena that we can expect that will happen. It is not that we are targeted by nature and the laws of nature change just to make us feel bad. That is not how reality works. That's how our minds sometimes interpret events, which cause us double misery. We are sick, so we're miserable, and then we lament, why me, why, what did I do why? And then that's your second source of misery, which is often worse than the illness. Number 2, you need not do anything against your nature. No one can make you do something against your nature. If you know what your nature is, if you've been working on yourself and you know that there are things you should do and things that you probably should not do if you want to look yourself in the mirror and call yourself a good person, let alone a Stoic, then you need to keep that in mind and not be pushed and prodded by the whims of others. You're not a puppet. Be your own human. Be your own puppet master. One other interesting thing about this reading is he mentions the Stoics by name, which he rarely does in his readings. Never does he say, I am a Stoic in his writings, but he is obviously a follower of Epictetus, and he occasionally references the Stoics in this way. I kind of think of myself in this way. I would feel like a hypocrite almost if I just said, I am a Stoic. And I know a lot of people say I'm a Stoic. I think of myself as a prokopton, one who makes progress. And I do so by following a lot of the Stoic vein of philosophy. I'm willing to be eclectic and bring on other ideas, new knowledge and things. I don't think an ancient Roman would call me a Stoic. So maybe I should be careful with that label. But I'm a follower of the philosophy of Stoicism. With some updates, of course. What about you? Are you a Stoic? Are you an eclectic philosopher that relies heavily on Stoicism? Are you an Epicurean? What do you call yourself? Are labels important? Should we label ourselves? Marcus doesn't seem to label himself very often. For some reason, I find comfort in a label, but I do not know what that label is. Should I just say I am a philosopher? Are you a philosopher? Obviously not in an academic sense, I am not, but in a Greco-Roman sense, I like to think of myself as such. However, I think to be a true philosopher, we occasionally need to put new information out there, not just the regurgitations of long dead thinkers. I try to do that occasionally in these little sermons that I give, but a lot of times, once again, I'm just rephrasing old ideas. But that's okay. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. It's harder to venture out on your own and do something new. So my light contribution, once again, nothing new, but just observations I have made. My grandmother turned 100. I myself realize that I'm within 30 years of the average lifespan of men in my family. It makes me put things in perspective. I used to think that as you reached a certain point, it would all make sense and things would feel complete. But now I realize that things are always in flux, always changing. You never arrive at a destination. And then one day the lights go out, whether that's quickly or through a long process of dying. You may know it's coming, you may not know it's coming, but you will not have completed all the projects you thought you would. There will be things you wish you had done that you could have done now, but you can't do then. It's good to prioritize things, to make sure you do things that you know you will have wished you had done, to start making habits of calling people, of loving your family, things that you do not want to regret at the end. And my grandma turned 100, she said, where did the years go? Time flew by. It's not like you get to 100 and say, boy, that was a long life. Remember, we all get time on this planet, some longer, some shorter amounts of it, but we have to use it to our advantage. And Dylan, thank you for writing in. I really enjoyed that email. It was inspiring to me and good for me to know that folks are out there that enjoy the strange format of my podcast. Thank you for writing to me and telling me your thoughts. I appreciate that very much. If you want to email me, you can do so at sundaystoic@gmail.com. Until then, remember to read into this philosophy. Don't just listen to me. Grab a copy of the Meditations. Grab a copy of Seneca. Grab some Epictetus. Read it. Download it. Check it out. Think about it. Stew on it. Journal about it. But most importantly, act on it. And then you will truly be seizing the day. And so until then, carpe diem.
Thank you for listening to the Sunday Stoic. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team. Earn rewards by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com. And as Steve always says, carpe diem.